Okay, in the last video, we talked about putting in the eyelets, and you can see from this, they're all in. And the next step that I take is to put in end papers before I'm going to bind anything in. So I've cut this piece of paper. So I should have talked about, this is a 5.5 by 8.5 journal with a 1.5-inch spine. And so I cut this paper and measured first and made this paper 12.5 inches long by 8.25 inches wide. I did print it on a massive sheet. There are great things that you can use for end papers, one of which is wrapping paper, depending on the quality of the paper. You can also print this on just a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet and piece it together or do it in 2 pieces. The glue I use for this is the pH neutral PVA from booksbyhand.com. And I am also, I'm going to put the corners on as well. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to put the glue on the back of the sheet. And I use a brush to do this. I just think it gets good even distribution this way. But there are many people who do this just by putting glue on in a back and forth pattern, and then it spreads itself out when you lay it down. Up to you. I find this to be the best way to get enough glue. In fact, the trick here is not to get too much glue, and that is tricky. So I'm working out, usually trying to get as much glue out of each stroke as I can. And then I'll fill this all out. I'll probably speed this part up for you. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to lay down my cover. Make sure that my cover and my end papers are going the same way. Then I basically try to head it. There we go. Lightly putting it in so that I can smooth it out. Okay. Okay, I do try to use tools in these instances, and this one is a great one for that. Your bone folder, just to get a nice smooth setting on there. Usually you can get out all of the wrinkles that way. There we go. Okay. And there it is. My end papers are in. So 2 steps after this. One is you have to punch in the holes here. You can use your awl to do that. So I just usually do that on each hole. And that way when you're ready to put your book in, your signatures in, you'll have a space for that. Don't worry too much about the aesthetics of this. It will get covered up by the binding, by the sheets you're going to bind in there. So I don't worry about that part too much. And then the final part that I have been loving is, oh yeah, this is the other thing when doing this. Let's do this. So when you put in end papers, it's really important that you work the binding so that everything fits and is stuck down, especially when you do this part, okay? And so you can see there's a piece up here I'm trying to get There it goes, to adhere. And sometimes this requires just a little bit of a tap in of some extra glue, which I'm going to do right here. Feels like, even though I did this with those things, that it did not get enough glue right there. There we go. So be patient with yourself as you learn these methods. This sometimes takes some time to learn, and every time it doesn't look exactly right, but these are junk journals, so the handmade part of them is part of the charm. Okay, then I will take these over, and I'm going to want to see, where am I going to want to put those on, make sure they fit okay. Okay, now I know that I want this to hold down both the end papers and the cover when it's done. Sometimes I do this with my bottle of glue and just drip it into there. But you do want to make sure that it is on there, because you can, over time, those can pull off unless you use a little bit of glue. And then the other thing I recommend is using, sometimes you can use a plier. My fingers have done enough there for that. All right. So catch me in the next video. I'm going to talk about actually putting in the signatures. And stick around if you like this video, like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to know every time I post a new video. Thanks, and happy crafting.